A lot of feminists are let's say gender critical. They think the gender roles are really kind of social constructs, while I gather evolutionary psychologists see it as a more evolutionary instinct. You might correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
what would be the almost biological gender roles? I'm not saying sex roles as in the femininity versus masculinity rather than male versus female. We all know what's the difference between sex and male versus female, but the femininity and masculinity, I gather from the feminists, this is really, really controversial ground. They don't like me saying, let's say, a feminine man or a masculine woman, because they say, what does feminine mean? What does masculine mean? And I'm like, well, there's actually, you can correct me, maybe Diana, if I'm wrong, but there's quite well established roles associated with women that you could call feminine roles and roles associated with men. I'd like you to speak a little bit about this, because I'm astonished since I joined the trans critical world how controversial it is for me to say that.
So this researcher that I worked with, they hired little boys to hold cameras or little girls to hold cameras in India. And they asked these Indian women what order they did their household chores. So they have a limited amount of water. So they have a jerry can. They go out before dawn to do their business. They poop in the field. They use a jerry can. They come in and then they use the first water to make tea and to make breakfast. And then they use the rest of the water for cleaning. If you look at all these Indian women, they have almost the same order of chores that they do in the day, every day, because they all have the same constraints. They have the same water source. This is all in one village. They live in a similar kind of environment. They have the same places where they buy food. And I think that's also what happens with gender roles. You don't want women to be out running around hunting big game, because they're a valuable reproductive resource. If you're a man and you can do it yourself, and your baby needs its mother to live and doesn't need you to live, then it makes sense for you to be protective of the mother. It makes sense for groups to protect women's bodily, safety, protect them, because women are much more necessary. And that's why you also say women and children go first off a boat, because women and children are the most vulnerable, but also because women are a reproductive asset. They're like wealth, and people are much more protective of women. And so if you ask, why does this happen? It's the same reason why women in India take their jerry cans out first thing in the morning, or do their washing up, or make their breakfast before they do their washing up with the limited water they have, is that given the same biological constraints, you're going to see similar roles and gender roles across the world.